Good morning YouTube and the internet, welcome to my shed, and today I'm going to show you how to pump out the fuel tank in an R32 Skyline the easy way. It would be fairly similar across most cars as far as the concept, but specifically for the R32 I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. I run an E85, fuel's been in there for a couple of months. It's going to have gotten some water in it, so I'm going to pump that fuel out, put some fresh fuel in and give it a run. So step one in your R32, and I think pretty much all R chassis Skylines, is find your fuel relay. 32, it's here. So we're just going to disconnect that. Comes off the slidey thing and unplug it. So what we need access to is these points. So basically what we're going to do is trick the ignition into thinking the car's running and provide constant power to the fuel pump. So just using little alligator wire clips, we're going to turn the ignition on first. With this disconnected, the fuel pump won't run, and then when I touch the right circuit, you'll hear it kick off. Okay, with the ignition on and an alternate power source, because this takes a while, you don't want to be draining your battery. It's not that one. You hear that? So it's that circuit there. So these two bottom pins, I'm going to leave that, turn the ignition off, and then connect that so we have an open circuit for the fuel pump permanently while that's in place. So now we can turn the pump on just by turning the ignition to the on position. Fuel pump is running and flowing fuel through the rail currently. Turn that off because we don't want that right now, because we're draining it. So I've got a bit of an amalgamation of hoses that fits over this to run it into a jerry can. Okay, now because we've tested this is under pressure because we just had the pump on. So obviously if you don't have this exact fuel rail, you'd have to do something slightly different, but for me, I just stuff a rag under there, grab the line, undo it. This is the feed side. I think this is reversed factory. I think the factory feed is on the back, but this makes it easy for me to do the pump, so I run the feed to the front. And now we've just got to get our little hose stuffed over the top of that. So with this hose running out of this hose, reaches my jerry can sitting on a little stool. Leave the rag here. You may get the odd drips and drops, so the way to avoid this from leaking at this fitting is to just put a little bit of forward pressure on that hose there. That engages the seal at the back of the fitting and you're good to go. Pop that, just a weight on there to hold the end of that hose in place. Something heavier would probably be better. I haven't done it in the new house and I can't find half the stuff that I have. So now we turn the ignition on, it'll just start pumping fuel out. I want to keep an eye on the hose, make sure it doesn't pop out. And we are pumping. You can hear that. Quick look here, there's no excess fuel coming out of there. And I want to have a look at the colour. Looks pretty clean. So this has 3/4 of a tank in it currently, which is a big waste because I filled it for Jap nuts, a bit under 3/4 of a tank. I filled the fuel tank for Jap nuts, and obviously I shredded the gearbox, which I haven't done anything about yet, but this will at least get the engine run again and make sure it's, you know, you should really be running these things every couple of weeks on E85. I've been working away and things, so this is just a safety with the fuel that's sat for 4 months, 5 months, something like that. It's probably okay. I have run fuel that's older than that, like for one start and then refueled it, but I've got the time. I'm going to pump this out. So just keep an eye on your jerry can. Make sure you don't overfill it. We just turn the ignition off, take this away, put it in a secret place, a safe place that's economically friendly, and then refill the jerry can again. And that will be 3 cans. Now, one thing you want to be careful, you might think, oh, I'll turn the ignition on and walk away, I've only got 15 litres in the tank, right? You might know the jerry can's big enough. The fuel pump uses the fuel as, I'm not sure if it uses it for lubricant, but it definitely uses it for cooling. So if you just leave it on, and sure enough you might not overfill your can, and you go away and do something else, once the tank runs dry you'll burn your fuel pump out. So in normal running conditions, once there's not enough fuel for the fuel pump to pick up, the car would die, the ignition would sense that there's no ignition, the engine's not running, and the fuel pump would turn off. In this instance, that won't happen. It will pump until the pump is stuffed. So yeah, just keep an eye on that. Don't walk away. And like I said, you want to use a different power source, not your battery, so I use this big heavy duty V8 jumper pack. And I pretty much use it all the time on this thing. I do have a little portable one here, which I chuck in the race car for when I'm racing, because it's pretty lightweight, fits in the glove box for an emergency. But for any pit or shed related stuff, I tend to use this big one. This is pretty expensive. I bought it at the hill climb a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, but it's been very good because the battery in this it's a lightweight battery and it's pretty weak actually. It was fine before I rebuilt the engine, but effectively it's been let to go flat a couple of times and doesn't really want to hold its charge. Keep an eye out for leaks. Sounded like fuel leaking out of somewhere else, but there is none, and I'd be able to smell it. I think it just might be cavitation that the pump's creating, so a couple of air bubbles in the line, which, because the pump wouldn't be running this fast normally. So that tank is pretty much full. Well, that can is pretty much full. So I'm going to go sort that out and rinse and repeat until the tank is almost empty. And I'll show you what the flow looks like when you sort of need to start worrying about shutting it off for fear of burning out the fuel pump. So I don't know if it's too dark, maybe you can see we're getting pretty close to the empty line on the fuel gauge, and we have a very, very reduced flow rate. That's still okay for just now, but we'll keep keeping an eye on it. At some point in the next couple of minutes, that'll start stopping and starting, or the flow will surge a little bit. That's indicating that there's not quite enough fuel getting to the pump. That's the time to shut it off. Whatever fuel is left in there at that point is staying in there, and then that'll just mix with the new fuel I put in. It should be diluted pretty heavily and not cause any problem. The other thing is water sinks to the bottom of the tank. The pickup is at the bottom, so if any water has been diluted into the fuel, it should have gone to the bottom of the tank, because it's not being mixed through, it's not being pumped through and made to mix, so it should have settled pretty much to the bottom. That's my understanding anyway, and I'm sticking to it. Let's ditch this. Literally just pull the hose out and watch it. It's getting pretty close. See how it's sort of coming in pushes and pauses. I'll get a bit more out. I'm probably being overly cautious with this too, like it could probably go even lower potentially, but I don't want to take the risk of burning out the pump. While it's like this I'm okay, but I do keep an eye on it, because much less than this it's time to pull the trigger or stop the trigger being pulled. Take the trigger off because we're on full auto at the moment. I think that's enough. The flow's getting quite low, which is pretty much empty on the gauge, so shut off the pump. Now the other can full, I had a good look. It is clear, like it's clean, so there's no rust or anything being pumped through. But it's just a loss. You can smell it hasn't got that fresh E85 goodness smell about it. So it's gone stale. It may not be a negative impact to the car to run it potentially, but it's definitely not optimal. However, if I could see, you know, if you could see discoloration, rust colour, anything like that, yeah, obviously that would be a big no-no, because that's going to go through your engine, water in your engine, even if it's mixed into the fuel, it's not a good thing. But yeah, I'll get rid of this, and then we'll put the other fuel in it, tighten up the fuel line, fix the fuel pump relay, or reattach it, and give it a start. So we're hooked back up here. Just another thing, make sure you clean up any spilled E85, preferably as you go. It can be pretty aggressive on some materials. This black strip on the top of these lights, that's the result of a E85 rag being sat on it, and it just dissolved it. So yeah, I don't know why that melts, but this rubber doesn't and this plastic doesn't, but I don't know what every material is, so I just try and keep everything as ethanol free as possible, apart from the fuel system, which it's supposed to be there. Alright, let's sort out this relay and put some fuel in. There. Easy as that. Now I've got an empty tank, but what I have here is a full jerry can of fresh E85, 25 or 20 litres, so that should be more than enough. We'll close this, we won't close this up because I'll need this for isolators and stuff, but we'll have to move the car forward, so I'll disconnect this. So I've put 20 fresh litres of fuel in. We're not just going to start it up though. First thing we're going to do is prime the fuel pump. It's stopped. I'm going to turn the ignition off, and I'm going to do it again. It's stopped. Third time. So, a couple of reasons I do that. Firstly, it pumps the fresh fuel through the rail and gets rid of any of the stale old fuel that may have been in the rail. Obviously there was some because it was still coming out. Second, it gives me an opportunity to check the fittings, the fuel line that I've just undone and done up. And then I'm going to disconnect the injector loom. Actually, I'll disconnect the ignition loom because it's easy. Actually, no, the fuel loom's the right one. Hang on. Okay, with the fuel injector loom disconnected, all that's going to do is stop the car from running when we start it, but it will pump the fuel for the first few seconds. And I'm just after oil pressure. Just want to turn it over. It hasn't started for a while, so listen for any strange noises and build some oil pressure. Okay, oil pressure gauge is over there. Which one is it? Middle one. Is that the gauge playing up? It shouldn't. The pressure gauge should not turn itself off and on again like that. This has had a dodgy earth in the past. I mean, there's no oil pressure light on the dash, and I know that works. Over there on the factory gauge. I stand corrected. Oh, here we go. We just got some movement. There we go. Oil pressure's starting to build. Lovely. That should be plenty of oil. 40 pound on the key turn. It's heaps. Let's plug this back in and turn it over and see what happens. So the voltage might be dropping slightly, even though I've got this really big heavy duty jumper. I've also got the circuit to the battery in the car open, so it's probably sending half its charge to the battery to try and revive that, because that's completely flat. But let's see what happens. Did I plug that in? Yep, still no fuel. No spillage. Ah, yeah, this is dropping a bit low, so I might not have had enough charge in that, but let's see how we go. Is there any reason why that wouldn't start? I know we have fuel, injector loom, looks alright. Sometimes it can just take a minute when it hasn't started for a long time. Let's check the relays. Yep. Not relay. Kill switch. Usually I like to wait for the first sort of kick before I give it any throttle. Right, let's see how we go. Well, that's disappointing. I drove it in here off the trailer. Last time I drove it was at the track and it was running just fine. Had no problem starting. I just wonder if it's insufficient voltage. I'm going to try the small jumper, see if it's charged. I'll try it again with the isolated kill switch turned on. That pedal there. There we go. Voila. Oh, yeah, that kind of important to send the circuit to the ignition. Come on. Plenty of oil pressure, that's what I'm looking at. That's me pulsing it just to keep it up. Try and let it idle back. And that's it, foot's off the throttle. Lovely, 80 pound, at idle. Plenty of oil. Sounds like it's running pretty smooth. Off. There's a cover for this, there it is. Yeah, it's been so long since I started the car, I forgot I had to put the kill switch, the ignition kill switch to on. So basically that's it, pumped out the fuel tank, give it a run, cleared it out, revved the shit out of it, scared myself. One of the backfires made me jump, even though I was making it do it. But you'll see that on my shorts. These shorts things, they seem to get shit tons of views with no effort. So I'm going to throw a couple of them up. Just basically me wringing its neck. Neighbours haven't complained yet, and I don't expect him to. He's got V8s and stuff next door, and mates with V8s who come by and do shit to him. So it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. I reckon if I did it for another hour he might get shits, but he seems pretty chill about it. Anyway, that's it for now. No new gearbox yet, but she's got fresh fuel in. She's been run. Any water residing in the system would have come out. It's been very wet in Brisbane. Thankfully it's been mostly like winter, so it's not overly wet, but we're coming into a very wet summer again. I haven't got a new gearbox yet. The other things I do have to do is surge tank. I actually have a carbon fibre bonnet, a boot, sitting up here. So carbon fibre boot lid to replace the factory one. So those two jobs I think I can do while waiting for finance and time, mostly finance, for that gearbox. A replacement OEM box is less than $4 grand, but a replacement OEM box is just going to do the same thing. So, especially when I turn it up. Remember, this is only running 14 pound. So when I turn it up to 30, or run it at 27 or whatever, wherever it likes to be run, for competition, but 30 on the dyno just to get a number and a chart. I honestly forget where I was going with that. Oh yeah, the factory box will not handle it, so no point rebuilding that one or any configuration of rebuilding that one. I could get an OS Geiken gear set. I'm not sure I like the ratios. They actually don't come with a 5th gear. That's like an extra 4 or 5 grand or some stupid number to get a 5th gear with that the extra strong 5th gear. Because 5th gear is not the weakness in these things, but apparently 690 newton meters of torque, 14 pound, has found a weakness in it. And when I turn it up, it's only going to be more, so I just run the risk of a bigger failure later. So CD009 is the most likely outcome. That's probably what I'll end up doing, which is a long wait. And yeah, I don't have the coin that I can freely throw at a gearbox at the moment, unfortunately. I've got to throw that coin somewhere else. I'm also going on holidays in a couple of weeks, so it won't be done before then, that's for sure. Anyway,
hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully I will get on to those other jobs and get the Falcon sorted out and get a video out on that and get onto the Mini. Since I've moved, I've now achieved most of the sort of first move-in things after 6 months. Got most of my crap put where it needs to go. I have travelled a lot for work and stuff in the last 6 months as well, so I've been in and out of town. But yeah, this is not the final condition of how I want this shed. As you can see, there's shit everywhere, but it's all out of boxes, and from here I can sort it. Like, I can just empty one shelf and then start sorting stuff on that shelf, then on that shelf, and then along here. I sort of did start over here. I've got everything over there is like a specialty tool or a part that is of use. This is all cranks, cut the engine blocks. That's all stuff that was in tubs. So there's like a sanding and painting one, there's a general house one, there's a tub full of parts, new parts, stuff that's useful. Fluids, my old trade toolbox, a heap of the fluids are on there because I pulled them out of there because I was looking for fluids the other day. Yeah, and some miscellaneous shit underneath. But importantly, I can walk all the way around both cars. And I've still got all this room in here. So basically I did oil change on the Falcon today, and I would actually, you know, drive it into the shed and do the job under the cover and in the comfort of a shed on a nice flat concrete slab rather than out there on that gravelly shit. I could do it over there on that slab, but I didn't want to. I want to make use of this so keep this clear, and for social gatherings as well. Anyway, I think I've rambled enough. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video, and hopefully it's not too long before the next video.